So one of the big scandals in Washington right now is the IRS monitoring or really restricting the ability of some Tea Party groups and some other right-wing groups to register for nonprofit status. So basically the IRS segmenting out certain groups based on their political views. So not doing this uniformly, but doing it just for right-wing organizations, particularly in this case, Tea Party groups. And you could look at this from a number of different perspectives. One is, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this story is, but of course, the IRS is by its very nature an organization of force. It is an organization that by legislation provides incredible amount of power to a number of individuals who sit in these IRS offices all over the country. So if you get pissed off at your neighbor, you don't like what your neighbor's doing or something, you can call the IRS and say, hey, I think my neighbor's cheating on his income taxes, and he'll probably get audited. Think of the power that gives you, that gives them. If they don't like, if you're an IRS auditor and you don't like what your neighbor's doing, right? You can go after that neighbor. Or if a business doesn't treat you right, you can go after that business. And believe me, this kind of stuff happens all the time. This is what happens when you give this kind of power to a bunch of bureaucrats, to anybody. Nobody should have the power that the IRS has. Nobody should have the right to come and look at all my books and check how much money I've made and how much money I spend and what I spend on, and whether they think what I spend on is okay to deduct from taxes or not okay to deduct. That is an immense amount of power, and it's a huge intervention in my life, in my privacy, in my, in what I do with my money. It's none of anybody's business, none of the government's business. So whenever you give that kind of power to any kind of a government agency, you're going to get massive abuses. And these abuses, in my view, happen all the time. They happen constantly, and nobody pays attention to them because everybody kind of just shrugs, because what option is there, right? Well, the only way to get rid of this is to get rid of the IRS. There should be no IRS. There should be no government agency that is monitoring your income and your expenses. You have a right to your life, which means you have a right to your money, which means you have a right to decide how to use that money, and you don't have to explain, you don't have to justify yourself, and you don't have to show the government what you did and didn't do. But this case is even worse than the usual thuggery of the IRS. This is a case in which they are targeting people based on their political views. So here you have where the government is targeting people based on their political views. So you have a clear violation here of the First Amendment. You have a clear violation of freedom of speech. Basically, what they're doing is they're putting, if you're a conservative or if you're in the Tea Party, and I would be as furious if they were targeting the left. It doesn't matter who you're targeting. It's the fact that they're targeting based on ideas. So the other kind of targeting, you're targeting people you don't like, that's just being a thug. That's just being a bad guy. This is now political targeting. It's targeting of free speech. This is literally the end of freedom. The last bastion of liberty and freedom is our ability to speak our minds. It's our ability to try to convince. It's our ability to try to reason with people, to change their minds about a point of view, to try to argue for a particular point of view. That is what is keeping civilization together, is the fact that we still view the way in which we resolve disputes as through argument, as through reason, as through discussion. But once you start having the government use its fist, use its gun, use the IRS to silence certain points of view, then that civilization disappears, that way of communicating disappears, and then it's all about force. It's all about who has the biggest gun, and really everything we do here at the Ayn Rand Institute, everything you do in order to advocate for freedom, it's all finished, because the IRS could shut us down tomorrow if they're targeting people they disagree with. Freedom of speech is the last bastion of liberty and freedom. When you lose freedom of speech, the fight can only continue on the battlefield of guns. The battlefield of ideas now is shut. So if there's any issue that you want to fight on the barricades for, on the intellectual barricades, it's the issue of freedom of speech. This example in the IRS is a horrific violation of that freedom of speech. And the Obama administration and whoever's responsible at the IRS should pay for this, and we should demand that they pay for this. This is a major league scandal. This is not the little stuff that they find here and there of what they disclose. This is a direct attack on our liberty, on our freedom, and our ability to change the world. And if we can't speak to try to change the world, then it's all over. So this one, take seriously.